Hi, everyone. This is Lead with Who You Are. I'm Dia Bondi, and in this show, we explore and discover what it truly means to lead with who you are, and we're doing it with people who embody just that. In this episode, we're talking with Wanona Satcher, founder of Makher Studio, about the intersection of design and equity, and to talk about the power of context, how in one place our talents can be a liability, and in another, they can be an asset. In this conversation, Wanona talks about how the word no isn't a bad thing and can be extremely useful in asserting our boundaries and amplifying our impact because it hones our focus. Wanona also tells us about the moment in her career that changed everything and sparked her journey to becoming an entrepreneur. Let's go. Hey, just a quick reminder. You can subscribe to this show on your podcast platform of choice. We're live nearly everywhere, and you can always listen to the show at diabondi.com. If there's a leader or innovator in your life who is at their shiniest when they lead with who they truly are, please share the show with them and rate, subscribe, and leave us a review. It makes a huge difference in the reach that the show has when you let everyone else know what you love about the show. Thanks so much. Wanona Satcher is the founder of Makher Studio, a green manufacturing and design build firm specializing in unique modular shipping container spaces that transform how we build community, employ locally, and make meaningful connections. She's an urban designer, landscape architect, city planner, and community engagement strategist. Wanona has a unique perspective on the transformational power of designed spaces. Wanona, thank you so much for being here.
So excited, super excited to see you again, Dia. It's been a couple of years, maybe.
I know. Before we got on the mic, I was thinking about how much I feel like I could just knock on the wall and be like, "Hey, Wanona, do you have any sugar?" Yeah. But really, I've just been gazing at you from afar over the internet for this last little while. But I always just feel like I hold you close anyway.
Same, yeah, definitely same vibe over here. So excited to get back to at least seeing you virtually. Hopefully one day in person.
I know. So I'm having you on the show, Lead With Who You Are, which we relaunched this year, because I remember so clearly, it's clear to me, but I might be filling in the blanks here. One call we had a few years back when you said that in your previous life, your pre-entrepreneurial life, you sort of got in trouble, so to speak, a fair bit.
That's true.
And those might not be the exact words, but the feeling of it was like you telling me that you often got in trouble, but that I understand now that today for you, you are maybe even more you than you could have been when you were leading inside of a system that had a hard time absorbing your talent and your vision for what was possible in and around the world of design.
Definitely.
And to me, this is context. Context is everything. In one context, who we are is a liability, and in another, it's an asset. This is how we can lead with who we are. When we find sort of the right context where who we are is actually an asset. And in some way, I know that you're passionate about and interested in how we use design and spaces to create certain realities and containers for things. And so in that way, this idea of context being the thing that can make who we are an asset or a liability, in that way, that space allows for something or doesn't. And so that's sort of the territory I want to be in when we have our conversation today. So I want to start where I always start, which is if you were to answer in a few sentences who you are, how might you do that? Wanona Satcher, who are you?
That's a great question. That's the question of them all. Well, I am an Atlanta native and CEO and founder of Makher Studio, which is a design, build, and green manufacturing company. And we really focus on, at the end of the day, democratizing access to community development, but specifically around the intersection, and you mentioned it earlier, design, the built environment, and also how we can support and inspire under-resourced communities to participate in their own clean and green future. And we do that through building passionately building and engaging communities around affordable housing and rapidly deployed affordable housing. So I am someone that I think has always been interested and invested in understanding how all the pieces fit together. I think naturally interested in taking those pieces and building new systems and new ways of living on this planet, living within our communities, within our neighborhoods, on our street, but doing it in a way that's highly collaborative with those that inspire me. So it's not. I don't feel that we empower anyone. I think that that's something personal and internal. But I will say that I hope that we inspire others through the work that we do to find their own solutions. I just happen to use design and construction to do that.
So give folks listening sort of a picture of the kinds of builds that you do, the kind of spaces that you design and install in particular places, and the kind of impact you want to have with those designs.
Sure. Yeah. So we started out at Makher Studio recycling shipping containers and retrofitting them, and we still do that today, retrofitting them into modular real estate. And so the idea is to recycle an abundant material that we have in our country, on our ports, in some of our states, and utilize that as an affordable way to rapidly deploy real estate that is needed specifically around small business spaces, affordable spaces for entrepreneurs like me, and around residential housing. We know that everything starts at home. And so what's critical, really, we've sort of transitioned since the last time we spoke, Dia, from using shipping containers for everything that spoke to equity to really starting to focus on affordable housing. That's really our impact space. And how can we build housing quicker, efficiently, effectively, but with quality and with better and safer materials for those that need it. The cool part about how we do that work, though, is we have a workforce approach. And so we focus on hiring local tradesmen and women in these communities to build the change that they want to see. And so we, as far as our skill set, I mean, we see the world holistically. And so it's not just about building these spaces, but it's also about how they fit within the context of existing communities and how they fit together. And so academically and professionally, I'm a landscape architect and city planner. And so looking at the entire landscape, especially in cities, the urban landscape, and how we can influence reimagining spaces that are vacant or spaces that are blighted, reimagining the use of materials in the urban landscape, reusing those materials to retrofit and create more value so that you have kids that look like me who don't want to and don't have to leave the communities to be considered better, have better opportunities. They can stay where they are because we help to build those spaces.
And I hear in that you're not just talking about will it fit, meaning will this design that is this length, this width and this height fit into that particular block or that particular corner lot. You're talking about the whole context of the experience.
Yes.
Am I off on that?
No, you're absolutely correct. And how do we how do we take that experience to influence how we design and what the solutions are? We are 100% solution driven. And part of that is understanding the actual problems, but building within the existing context with those individuals who help to create the cultures that exist in those communities. And so it's building with and collaboratively as partners with residents, with neighbors, with communities and stakeholders versus building for or not for those individuals. It really has to be an engaged process.
So do you partner with developers and city development agencies together as a multi-stakeholder group to design / redesign?
Yeah, I mean, we started out really direct to consumer,
I
building remember that? Yeah. And which, I guess is a natural progression for companies. And we are slowly but strategically turning more to B2B customers. So those larger real estate developers, larger, cities and housing authorities, even the military would be an interesting partner because of the need for quality military housing and support for families and veterans. So we are really starting to grow with who and understand who exactly is our audience, who are our buyers, and what's the difference between those that dwell in our spaces and those that buy our spaces.
So when folks that you're needing to collaborate or that you do collaborate with to have sort of a multi-stakeholder group come together to imagine and design a space that is integrated and serves the community in the way in which, in a way in which is aligned to the kind of impact you want to have. I mean, is there a moment before you get going where you have to be like, here's how we do this. And if you're not on board with what this collaboration model is that we do, we can't work with you, Mr. Developer or Mrs. Developer with really deep pockets who has ambitious ideas. I mean, is there a little bit of like, do you have to do some enrolling and designing your alliance with them such that there's room in your process to co-create with a community and not just develop on top?
Well, yeah, I mean, and Dia, that's always been at the beginning for us. That is part of what we call due diligence. For a lot of companies, due diligence is simply more the technical aspects of understanding existing conditions. For us, due diligence is understanding the relationships that we are going to build, future relationships with both the client and, again, those individuals that they're building for or who we're building for. So it's imperative for us to understand that at the beginning and build that into how we move forward. And either we do or we don't. And we're continuing to have to make more of those decisions as we grow and as more people find out about us, because we only do work that aligns with our mission and values.
Have you had to say no to some partnerships in the last couple of years?
We have had to say no to some smaller partnerships, and we also just had to make as a team a decision to say no in the future to any and everything that has nothing to do with affordable housing. So no pools, no, we get called. In fact, we're working on a shipping container restaurant right now. And while that is very interesting, that is not where our heart is. That is not where our impact is. And so part of that is letting go that we need to position ourselves to do anything. And at the end of the day, it's also just an operations conversation. We just can't be effective doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an interesting idea to like decide now. What did you say? To decide to say no to things in the future.
Yes.
I mean, that seems obvious. Like, yeah, figure out what you want to say yes to and what you want to say no to. But you're making a decision now for every opportunity in the future.
Yeah, we've learned the hard way, and at the end of the day, it's all about building integrity and credibility. I don't look like and am not considered a good old boy, and so I don't have the luxury of not being smart about who we say yes and who we say no to. And the other thing I've learned in this entrepreneurial journey is that no necessarily isn't a bad word. And we're always taught that no is so bad, but in actuality, it's probably one of the best words out there. It allows you to set healthy boundaries for yourself and for others. And it also helps you save money and time. And it also helps you to focus. So yeah, while you're a startup, you need to make money, you got to make money. But where does that lead you at the end? Are you left unhealthy and haven't made your impact? Or have you said, listen, I might not have made the amount of money that I wanted, but I made the impact that I needed to make so that I can actually start attracting the energy and the people that we need to be successful. So how do you build that into a business model is the question. And that's what, we hope to do by saying no to things that just don't align to what we're trying to do.
You sound so clear, Wanona. I mean, you were pretty clear when we had some deeper conversations a couple of years ago when you're doing more sort of flexible spaces, pop-ups, clinic spaces, et cetera. You were really clear on what kind of impact you want to have, and that still remains, in hearing you talk today, but how you're doing it and what you're focusing on in order to do it seems much more laser focused.
Well, Dia, I appreciate that. Now, I guess that's part of the cool thing about that we haven't spoken in so long, because it's for you to see, and plus the work that you do in coaching entrepreneurs, to be able to, and you're such an amazing listener, to be able to see outside of our forest how much we have grown. It really makes me very happy to hear that, because you're so in the weeds working on the business. But we hope that we are transforming and getting better at telling our story, which is, how we met.
Yeah, it is how we met. I mean, it's almost like the way in which you're talking about it now is like a more concentrated version of how you talked about it a few years ago. It's like it's turned into it's like in pill form now, in the good way, you know?
I like that.
Where, it's just what's actually essential and nothing else. And that's so
Yes.
congratulations on that. I love that. It's like, I love
Thank
seeing
you.
entrepreneurs that I work with and have worked with become a more potent version of themselves and their own vision. So that I hear that come through in
Nice.
how you talk about it. So speaking of potent, okay, I want to talk about you as and the part of you that used to, or maybe still does, get in trouble. So, so a few years ago, you shared with me this project that you were I'm going to use the word instigator, were the instigator on, called the state's longest dinner table. Can you tell the story about what that was? And then I want you to, if you would share with everyone, like how you got in trouble for it.
Yeah, so my last 9 to 5, I was a city government employee. And I lasted about 4.5, 5 years and still short of, shaking that off. But while I worked there, I ran and started an innovation lab. And that innovation lab was a culmination of civic engagement, fair housing, code enforcement, community engagement, tech, working with the techies in the Durham, RTP, Chapel Hill, Raleigh area, you name it. And coming up with and designing what I consider a mixture of like tactical urbanism, a mixture of small, economic development planning, due diligence, again, going back to that due diligence. How do we bring people together that normally don't sit around the same table? How do we build those tables? What does that look like? And what do we use as the tool to do that? And I realized, food. Food always brings a variety of people together. I had already sort of made friends and created this extended family of food entrepreneurs in Durham, North Carolina, who I can still consider family today, and really worked to put together what we call North Carolina's longest dinner table. And initially, I put out the call to other city staff who can fix the best chili or who can fix this. We put out the call to urban farmers because I knew a lot of urban farmers. I worked with them on some projects and programs. We spoke to the surrounding restaurants, even a brewery. And we put out the call to all of these neighborhoods within this one intersection that really wasn't a district. It was just an intersection of other districts. And so we created this long dinner table. This was in 2014. I was just hoping to get 100 people. I would have been so happy. We ended up getting about 1,200 people.
And to paint the picture, so were you actually cordoning off this sort of intersection where these 4 districts came together to build an actual physical table, not a metaphorical table, but a physical table?
It was a physical table. We cornered off the major streets that sort of radiated into this intersection. Worked with other city staff within our department, other departments. The community started bringing. So what was happening was every time a family would come, they'd bring their own table. So not only did we create this table, people were adding tables to our table. And then they were bringing their own food. And then we had food trucks bringing their own food. One of the breweries totally forgot about the idea, but ended up quickly bringing a whole bunch of beer, which we couldn't drink as city staff. But what was interesting was we had music, some of the churches, they were grilling out. What was interesting was one of the guys that was there, at the end, I saw him walking with a big tray of barbecue. And he said, I didn't know where I was going to get my food from today. You saved my life tonight. And then the person next to him was a mayor of a nearby city in North Carolina in the Triangle Triad area. And then you had other city council members. You had county commissioners. I mean, it was some of the most interesting people around one table. And one of the other reasons why I decided to do this was because a community group had come together to create a project called Marry Durham, where everybody would marry to the city, which I thought was pretty neat. So we considered what they were considered what I was doing as the first family dinner. And so we did that after that event. So it went well. I didn't want to do it again. I just wanted to sort of prove the point. And everybody kept running up to me saying, we got to do this next year. So I had no complaints. Everybody was super excited about it. Come 2015.
This is where you get in trouble.
This is where we get in trouble. And we moved to a different location, not far from that first location, to Central Park in Durham, and set up the tables, similar setup. But for whatever reason, the county was like, if somebody's going to get sick, then we're going to be in trouble. We got to have the health department there. You can only have people who are registered to cook in the city and in the county. Who are the farmers? Some of the city department supervisors were angry because they didn't want their staff taking off time to cook meals. So that was a problem for whatever reason.
Yeah,
And
how
so,
dare you take 6 hours out of a work year to
how
like
dare,
do
exactly.
a
And the city staff that supported us were so excited because they felt that that was an opportunity to do something, to actually participate in the city that they work for, that we pay, people were paying us to provide services for them. But this one, I also work with a lot more artists. So one of the artists that I work with took these big, huge pallets and created a wall, and each section was themed a different category. So one was urban agriculture, one was transportation, one was education, one was housing. And we put buckets of markers on each wall so people could write how they felt about each of these themes. And a lot of people loved writing on that wall because it wasn't forceful. It wasn't a meeting. It wasn't, people weren't standing over you watching what you had to say.
Yeah, nobody was, under a hot
Exactly.
light and a spotlight.
Yep,
Yeah.
just free to feel and to express themselves. And these are also people who maybe they work third shift and never had the opportunity to go to a meeting, a community meeting. So I'm standing around monitoring, managing the project. Dinner had just started, and one of the police officers ran up to me on his bike and said, "You should be ashamed of yourself for even allowing this event to occur." And so I'm like, what's the problem? And he said somebody wrote on one of the walls that when white people move into my neighborhood with their dogs, it scares me and I feel terrorized. That's all they put. And he said, you're going to start a race riot by allowing someone to put that in writing on a board. Well, my director was standing right there when he said it. So she asked one of our other, one of my coworkers to spray paint over what that person had written. And that's when I knew my time was going to be short working for the city. So I ended up telling one of the city council members. My director finds out. I start getting scolded for that. Meanwhile, dinner is going great. We had double the amount of people. So it was about 2,400 people this time that showed up. And one of the ladies is an older white woman, came up to me and said that this was the first time that she had seen such a diverse and inclusive amount of people at this park since the sit-ins that she participated in during and supported during the civil rights movement back in the late 60s. And to hear that really supported the idea that I had to use food to bring people together in a way that promoted equity, but using spaces and we actually designed the spaces for different components of that park strategically to support this serendipity, these really cool collisions that people would create just by sitting next to each other. One other gentleman came up to me and said, I'm actually homeless, but I don't feel homeless because nobody knew I was homeless, right? Because we were all sitting at the same table and we were all in line getting the same food, and all this was free. So to hear those kinds of responses really made everything worthwhile. Once it was over, that's when everything went downhill because I was then told by the city manager, you need to stay in your lane. I was told, how dare you invite other staff, city workers without talking to their supervisors to support this effort.
I mean, right there, just how dare you? And then you can just fill in the blank with whatever.
Yep.
How dare you wear that blue shirt? How dare you, give people an opportunity to post their feelings on a wall? How dare you allow for food sharing without a permit? How dare you? Like, you could just fill it in from
Yep.
there, couldn't you?
Nonstop.
And
Nonstop.
it's so interesting to me that this story that I'll let you finish, but I want to say that like the idea of how dare you is such a go back to how I set this up, that like in that context, the fact that you dare, Wanona, at all was such a problem in that place. But now it is essential to your success, isn't it?
It is. And it's funny you say that because when I was extremely insulted when the city manager said, you need to stay in your lane, because as a city employee, we should all be in the same lane, on the same highway, on the same team. Now, I actually think that's kind of a cool statement, because not only am I staying in my own lane, I'm creating it as well. But the hard part, though, was after that dinner, and that was the last time that we had that dinner. That was 2015. We didn't do it in 2016, which is actually the same year that I resigned. And I can't tell you, how many people, I can't even count, who were running up to me asking me, when are we doing this again? I even had other meetings in other cities, way in Asheville, because they wanted me to show, how we did it. How can we take that and scale it to their community? I mean, there were people who were thirsty, and the community was thirsty because everybody's so divided. People were hungry for this. And I even had people from other departments say, you're making us do more work. That is not why we're here. You're having more people ask us questions because you've brought some things to light. That is not why you're here. And they ended up moving me out of my office to a cubicle in front of everyone, and made me move out all of the different art materials and everything that I had to use, and actually the community provided to me to build out this dinner. We had lots of artists and lantern parades. I mean, it was all kinds of things. And I think what hurt me the most was the staff, because there were so many people within the city who were not supervisors, lower level staff, who were running to me saying, well, when are we doing it again? And I already have my new chili recipe. And, I never thought that I was never given the opportunity to help and actually be part of the community that we supposedly, provide services for. And you provided the opportunity for so many of us. And I didn't even know that. And I would have to tell them, I can no longer do this dinner. Then I get in trouble for that. Raised to be a change agent. We all have been, to make a difference, to leave an impact. And I thought that meant in my mind that I could change that system. And so when it didn't work, that just tore me to pieces. And it took my aunt to say, yeah, we taught you that, but there are some systems you're not going to be able to change. And once I understood what that meant, it took me about 5 minutes to get over it and get over the anger. That I was like, she's right. And this lift, it just left. And that's when I made the decision to resign, and become an entrepreneur and move back to my hometown of Atlanta.
I think it was so powerful. I think you and I met through SheetEO, which is now Coreless, and the notion that that we can't change a system that wasn't built for us.
Correct.
And instead, to step outside and build and imagine new systems that can change everything for what's possible. While you're getting your hand slapped to use design to imagine and create opportunities and containers for community connection, now that vision. I think I started this podcast saying that, you were in a context that had a hard time absorbing, your energy and your vision for this. And now it's like what you can commit to. So now that you're outside, again, it doesn't make you a problem. It makes the context disabling to your talent and vision. So now that you are in an entrepreneurial setting, now that the context is different for you, how is your energy and vision and your edge working for you, and is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. And a lot of that has to do with just my being comfortable with being unapologetically me, and taking those no's and those frustrations, and being as creative as possible with providing solutions and building those new systems that you were just talking about. Entrepreneurship is hard and it's extremely emotional. But when you have 100% of freedom, there's a freedom there with being able to determine and decide who is your audience to begin with. That context then shifts, because now I have more of an opportunity to build in safer spaces and find those familial connections that are necessary to grow in those spaces, those philosophical moments that where I can meditate and uh, shed what isn't going to work for us and grow what does. And that's really a big part of it, is just having the time to be able to not have to go to a 9 to 5, and I can take a full day or two and just meditate on that context and what is needed to move to the next level. And there's no micromanagement. There's no somebody misunderstanding you purposefully. There is no competition in that way. It really is a freedom. But the thing about freedom and the thing about growth is that it's uncomfortable, and most people don't want to be uncomfortable. I think what those lessons taught me with the Thanksgiving and spring, that dinner table, and a lot of the other lessons that I learned working there and in other jobs as well. But then transition entrepreneurship is, I think the most success, at least for me, comes with the ability to be able to thrive in being uncomfortable, and practicing that. That doesn't work in that kind of a system because it's not built for it to be shaken up. It doesn't respond well to that.
Yes.
It doesn't respond well to questions. It doesn't respond well to light. It doesn't respond well. It's nothing about it is proactive, and that is totally opposite of what I do. And I think, Dia, we talked about this when we first met, this idea of prosilience and being proactive first before reacting, because that's really all, especially government. Everything is so reactive.
It's very interesting that you point to this idea of like, it's not very responsive in that all your efforts are like shouting into the void,
Right.
and how demoralizing that can
Exactly.
be, again, because we're grappling with a system that doesn't want us, and
Mm-hmm.
not in a way in which that is just resisting because change is hard, but is just out and out rejecting the input. So,
Yes.
so as you think about, you said something, I want to go back to something you said a minute ago around being, misunderstood. Now people are not, misunderstanding willfully, or purposefully. But I did in our early engagement, you and I talk about sort of the struggle and the feeling of being misunderstood. As you were first articulating and helping the world understand what you were trying to build. It's not just like, we'll build a spot for somebody, we'll build a house for somebody to buy. There's a whole ecosystem that you're trying to cultivate in and around housing and spaces, that you're using housing and spaces to sort of design spaces as a catalyst for,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what has it been like for you, even in the context of entrepreneurship, to thrive in the face maybe of being misunderstood? And how do you keep going when you are experiencing that feeling of being misunderstood?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, it's highly frustrating. And part of it is because it's a waste of time. And it's one of those things where it's like, come on, people. I mean, there's nothing really new under the sun. It's just potential, it's new perspectives. This new way of making that recipe, right? Same ingredients, different recipe. Why is it so difficult for you to understand? I know I'm not speaking some language that is otherworldly. Why do you seem to understand this person but not me? And I think there's a fine line between a fit and an understanding. And I've had to. I think part of it has been going through, and it's gotten harder just because we are getting better, and so which is weird.
Yeah, you'd think we're so good at this. We know what we're doing. It should be getting easier, but you're saying no. Actually, it's getting harder. There's more
No,
friction there. What's
more.
harder?
There's more friction. Yeah, there's more friction because we have done more with less compared to other companies and founders who have had more resources, capital, mentorship, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and have done less. And that entrepreneurial system, the system of trying to attract investment, of having to pitch what you do, that is where the friction is. Because how can she do more with less and do it better? We have all these resources and we haven't done as much as she has yet. And then when I sell what we do, the expectation is I don't know enough about our work because I don't look like the person that should be doing it. And they find out that that's not correct. And so there's that friction. And a lot of it has to do with their own biases. And a part of it too, Dia, is just recognizing that some people are actually not wanting to understand you for a lot of their own personal reasons. For me, though, the practice recently, actually, some exercises that I participated in at this recent climate accelerator that I had never done before, helped me to understand, well, why are you focused on that noise? Because that's what it is anyway, instead of focusing on who actually is your audience. They seem to get it. They seem to understand. And so that's when you start to design comes in of designing and strategically designing partnerships and those familial connections, those relationships that understand enough to be able to ask really intelligent questions and provide critical feedback needed for us to move in the right direction. So we've had to just understand who our audience is to begin with and leave the rest behind.
Is there a good kind of misunderstanding? Like, can you tell the difference between that's a misunderstanding that's worth staying with and ones that were like, it's just not going to happen?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So the good ones, like what I was just saying about those individuals who provide the positive critiques and feedback and ask a lot of questions, you can intuitively, because intuition has a lot to do with it, you can intuitively tell, okay, clearly they want to know more information. One of the things I learned when I was back in architecture school was after you do your presentation and everybody's quiet, you're in trouble. Like that's what you don't want. So I welcome those questions, but it's also how people ask the question.
Yeah.
What is the tone behind that question? What is your actual question? And part of that is, and I have to get better at this, but I am practicing little by little, is my ability to really listen to what's being asked and how it's being asked. That's really the key.
So when you think about, so just for folks who are listening, who might be experiencing that feeling of what do I stay engaged with when I'm experiencing being misunderstood, and what do I walk away from? Where do I recognize that, like, oh no, this is the right context for me to, deliver my own vision, energy, my own pill form of myself in this leadership moment, in this business decision, whatever it is, and which ones to go like, oh, that's a brick wall, I got to walk away.
Right.
Is I hear you saying that when you notice there's as much work going on the other side of the table to try to understand as there is work that you're doing to help them understand.
Right. That's a good way to put it, because the simplest explanation tends to be the correct one. If I have to work 3 or 4 times as hard for you to understand what I'm saying, something's not right. And usually that happens and it's on the first call. It's not like someone says, okay, let me think about what you said. Let's have another call to keep talking about it. Because that's a great sort of relationship potentially. But it's the first same call when someone keeps repeating the same questions, and the misunderstanding is built into their own purposely not wanting to understand what you're saying. And I had that happen to me.
I want you to work harder.
Well, that and to come to a no. Like I had this one investor that claimed he was so excited. He kept asking me to provide him with all this information. And each time that I did, the simplest things he would pick out and say, well, this concerns me. And it's like, dude, this is an easy fix. Well, but, and it was always a but. I had all the references I needed, and these were great references, so that wasn't the issue. I already have products to market, so that wasn't the issue. This guy was deliberately trying to find reasons to say no. And that's when I said, this is wasting our time and your time. Yes. We need to move on, because part of that is that energy will prevent other opportunities that are sort of flying around in the ether from being attracted to you. And that was really my concern. I'm not even worried about you anymore, because I already figured out that this is a waste of time. It's the other opportunities that are being hindered because of this foolishness. So you can tell very quickly if you just sort of pay attention. But I always go back to that intuition. Intuitively, this conversation isn't working.
Absolutely.
And you have to be prepared to say no, that's okay. Thank you. Just because you have the resources doesn't mean those are the right resources for us. So somebody else can use them.
So as you think about your own entrepreneurial life, the experience of forging ahead and, carving a path for the impact that you're trying to have in the world, where do you find community? Because I hear you very concerned with coherent community, I don't want to say it's non-inclusive of you, but it's easy to like create containers and watch other people connect and hear the feedback, and that's beautiful. But it's like you're backstage, you know. Where do you find community? Because I know entrepreneurship can be a lonely road.
Definitely. Even when you have, 10 people in a room, you still feel that you're the only person in there. That's just the nature of it. So a couple of things. I will say that home is a very interesting place. Moving back home is I assumed that that was going to provide the community that I once had being from here and I left to start a career. But home changes sometimes, and sometimes it passes you, or you pass it,
Yeah, or you
and
change and you can
or
you
you
come
change.
back, but you're not the same, and so nothing
Right,
can be the same. That's very
right,
yeah, right.
right. And so I realized that home is a wonderful place because number one, it's home. It's familiar. It's so that makes it a great place to be able to start a company, experiment, explore, essentially in your own backyard. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the best place to create a community that can support our work. In fact, I've learned that I think the future of successful entrepreneurship, and the future of our planet as a human race really should be anyway embedded in multidisciplinary approaches. You can't be successful in my mind without um, collaborating with others that bring other perspectives to the table. And if you're not able to do that and manage that, and allow that to flourish, then you're not that great of a leader to begin with. My communities have included writers, journalists, scientists. I mean, I get super excited watching welders, especially women, watching people just get so excited about their expertise, get so excited about being able to partner with me to share what they do. So that has been how I have created communities.
I hear you saying that, you find community in other makers,
Yes,
whether they're scientists
exactly.
or artists, welders, creatives, designers. Like it's almost agnostic to the discipline, but if there's a maker spirit in it, that's a community you can feel less alone in.
That goes back to what we were saying earlier about systems that, yeah, personally, I don't have, it's just not my piece is not within tearing down systems, like you said, the ones that aren't built for us anyway. It's really my time, and my space really is within building new systems. So I need to be surrounded by builders, and makers. Again, in those spaces, from food entrepreneurs that I mentioned earlier, from farmers, people who grow and make. In fact, when I was working for the city, the lowest point, those terrible days, I would get these gifts from community members, from farmers who would leave fruit on the door, who would leave vegetables. And to me, that meant more than my paycheck, because it's like, okay, clearly you care about my person, you care about my health and wellness, and that's not easy to find these days. So to constantly be, and these are people who problem solve every day. They focus on solutions versus problems. You can tell that they don't focus on the struggle. They focus on how we're going to move forward. And that's what really makes me optimistic, because I think there are more makers than I definitely know there are more makers than what the media shows. I definitely know there's more makers than people talk about, in online or on social media. If you walk down your street, you can find those makers. Now, we know that all these makers are not going to have the same resources and the opportunities and access. That's the problem, which is why I do what I do. But they're all makers, all ages. And I love watching people just create. And that makes me extremely optimistic and very excited about the future.
So, for our last question, for you, Wanona, what does it mean to lead with who you are?
It really is being unapologetically you. Um, it means never compromising that. It means going to war and a battle to sustain that. It means um, it means being on a constant road to inspiring others and working in service. For me, um, it means demanding quality, but it means to be extremely colorful in how you do it, and that doesn't necessarily mean being loud. but it means to be quite expressive. And really being able to articulate and efficiently articulate what is the change that you are creating. For me, being me, it's all about impact. It's all about change. I cannot not see, like there are some people who, when they look at life, look at the world, they see equations. For me, I see connections. How can this person or this idea be connected to create some new solution that will then support the work that we're doing? We're not here to build your solution, but we are here to build the infrastructure for your solutions to flourish. And so how can I help support that? It's all about being, and all about being empathetic and love and bringing love to that, and caring and kindness. That's really me. And I just happen to, do it wearing blue hair, which tends to stand out, but that's who I am.
Wanona, it was so great to talk to you and to see you and to hear what has remained so steadfast in your, again, the word impact, the impact that you're trying to have in the world, and what you've continued to refine, so that you can have a very sharp sword.
Well, Dia, listen, as always, I appreciate what you have done for me and really helping me to tell my story, to be comfortable in that story, and how my story changes. That was the other thing. One of the things I always remember that you said was never give away all your cookies. And that's been so valuable to growing and to saying no, and really taking care of the energy around what we're doing and who we meet. But just super thanks for, this continued opportunity to share my story and my company story and the work that we are doing and the impact we're trying to create. And of course, thanks for always sharing on social media what we're doing as well. So anytime, hopefully we'll do this again and I'll be even better.
I know. Maybe we'll be in Atlanta live.
Yeah, that'd be so great.
I know. It would be so great.
Great.
All right. I'm going to see you, and I'm still watching.
Thank you, friend. I really appreciate it.
Lead with Who You Are is a production of Dia Bondi Communications. Scored, mixed, and produced by Arthur Leon Adams III, and executive produced by Mandy Miranda. You can reach out to us at hello@diabondi.com or leave us a voicemail at 341-333-2997. You can like, rate, share, and subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Go to diabondi.com for show notes and to learn about all it is that we do to help you speak powerfully and lead with who you are.